The wife of Scientology leader David Miscavige has not been seen since 2007. Multiple missing persons reports have been filed, but each time they've been closed within hours by the LAPD as unfounded. The same woman's mother was found dead in 1985 with 3 gunshot wounds to the chest and 1 to the head. Scientologist Lisa McPherson died after undergoing an introspection rundown at the church's headquarters in Florida. Her body was found to be severely dehydrated, underweight, and covered in hundreds of cockroach bites. Her death was officially ruled an accident. Cult leader Charles Manson tried out Scientology in the 1960s, but eventually declared it too crazy for him to continue. According to former Scientologist Leah Remini, John Travolta has been designated as a Kakan, meaning he's allowed to murder anyone he wants and the church will look the other way. Founder L. Ron Hubbard's own son was highly critical of Scientology and claimed black magic was its inner core. He once stated, "My father didn't worship Satan, he thought he was Satan." In 2016, a 66-year-old Canadian man was arrested for murdering 8 people over a 7-year span. During that time, he worked as a popular mall Santa in Toronto. In 2008, diver Mike DeMar was on vacation in Florida when he decided to test out his metal detector for the first time. The stars aligned when Mike stumbled upon a rare golden chalice, an artifact he initially thought was junk. After visiting an appraiser, Mike discovered that the chalice was worth over $1.3 million. Historians say it's just over 400 years old and probably came from a ship called the Santa Margarita, which sank off the coast of Key Largo in 1622. A pair of Dutch short track skaters finished a race so closely that it was impossible to pick a winner. They both finished with a time of 43.128 seconds, so they ended up sharing the gold. After Harry Houdini's death, his will requested that all of his magic equipment be given to his brother Theodore, but on the condition that it be burned and destroyed upon Theodore's death. Instead, the equipment ended up in the Houdini Magical Hall of Fame, a museum that burned down in 1995, and all of the memorabilia was destroyed. Christian Bale got the inspiration for his character in American Psycho while watching Tom Cruise on The Late Show with David Letterman. Bale said Cruise had this very intense friendliness with nothing behind the eyes, which he would try to emulate through the character of Patrick Bateman. This is the skull of a 16th century female vampire with a brick in her mouth to prevent her from feasting on plague victims. In 2011, a Florida senator tried to bring back dwarf tossing, arguing that, in this economy, why would we want to prevent people from getting gainful employment? Dwarf tossing in Florida was only made illegal in 1989 after one dwarf died from alcohol poisoning. But other than New York, it's still legal in every other state. Texas got rid of last meal requests after a death row inmate ordered 2 country fried steaks, a triple cheeseburger, a beef and cheese omelet, a pound of barbecued beef, a loaf of bread, 3 fajitas, a meat lover's pizza, a pint of Bluebell ice cream, and peanut butter fudge. He then proceeded to eat none of it. In 2016, an Egypt air flight to Cairo was hijacked by a man wearing an explosive vest. While the other passengers were fearing for their lives, 27-year-old British man Ben Inez approached the terrorist and requested a selfie. Although slightly bewildered, the hijacker had no problem with him taking it. Ben later reasoned that if the bomb turned out to be real, he would have nothing to lose anyway. Thankfully, the bomb turned out to be fake and the man was apprehended. Nicknamed the Great Imposter, Ferdinand Waldo Demara Jr. impersonated a civil engineer, a sheriff's deputy, a lawyer, a monk, a child care expert, a prison warden, a psychologist, a teacher, a cancer researcher, a doctor, and many more. But perhaps his greatest act was when he pretended to be a naval surgeon during the Korean War. He had no prior medical knowledge but possessed a photographic memory and was able to memorize an entire textbook. He performed 19 successful surgeries before being exposed as an imposter. In the 1990s, nerdy college student Dustin Honkin decided to use his newfound knowledge to become a crystal meth kingpin. He made boatloads of cash and was willing to do anything to protect his business. At one point, he murdered an entire family of 5, including 2 little girls, all in an effort to protect his criminal enterprise. He was eventually caught and executed by the state of Iowa just a few years ago. In 2006, 27-year-old Ohio State medical student Brian Schaefer entered a bar with some friends. After security cams recorded him entering through the bar's only public entrance, Schaefer was never seen exiting the bar and has not been seen nor heard from since. In 1981, a Turkish man shot Pope John Paul II 4 times but didn't kill him. After the Pope recovered, he visited the assassin in prison and gave him his forgiveness before pardoning him. 33 years after his crime, the man visited the Vatican and laid flowers on the Pope's tomb. While filming the first fight scene in the movie Troy, in which he played mythological hero Achilles, Brad Pitt ruptured his Achilles tendon. The ironic injury halted filming for several weeks while the actor recovered. In 1971, Edwin Robinson from Maine suddenly went blind and nearly deaf after a truck accident. But 9 years later, he was struck by lightning in his backyard, and his vision and hearing were both miraculously restored. Legendary authors C.S. Lewis and Aldous Huxley both died on November 22, 1963, but their deaths were overshadowed by a far more noteworthy death that occurred on that same day: the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. In 2021, a Canadian woman was asleep in her bed when she was suddenly awoken by an explosive bang from her ceiling. She jumped out of bed and turned on the light, discovering a meteorite nestled between her pillows. She was inches away from becoming only the second person in recorded history to be struck by a meteorite, and likely would have been the first to be killed by one. Frank Fritz of American Pickers left the show in 2020 to focus on his health following a feud with co-star Mike Wolfe. Sadly, he suffered a debilitating stroke just last year and has been living under a temporary guardianship ever since. In 2008, suspected serial killer Ricky Simmons was found dead of heat stroke in the trunk of his ex-girlfriend's car. Investigators believe Simmons was waiting in the trunk to ambush and murder his ex-girlfriend, but he became locked in the vehicle. A 62-year-old Chinese woman who had a constant runny nose for decades was suddenly suffering from headaches and breathing problems. An x-ray soon revealed that she had a bullet lodged in her head near her nostril. She then remembered when she was 14 years old, she was going for a walk and felt a sudden stinging pain in her temple. She started bleeding but thought she'd only been hit by a pebble, so her family simply patched her up and didn't find it necessary to take her to the hospital. Apparently, she'd been... Michael Jackson once paid a witch doctor $150,000 to put a curse on Steven Spielberg. The expensive ritual involved the slaughtering of dozens of animals, including 42 cows, all because Spielberg didn't give Michael the role of Peter Pan in his 1991 film Hook. The director had previously promised Michael the part, but decided to make the movie a comedy instead of a musical and went with Robin Williams instead. This was devastating for Michael, since he famously had an obsession with Peter Pan and the idea of never growing up. In 1988, Michael purchased a private amusement park that he would name Neverland Ranch and live at for 25 years. He invited children from all over the world to his home, typically as charitable events for kids in need. But in 2003, Michael was charged with multiple counts of essaying a minor, and Neverland Ranch was searched extensively by police. Despite being acquitted of all charges 2 years later, Michael never returned to his home. Playboy model Anna Nicole Smith didn't receive a single penny when her 90-year-old billionaire husband died. Oil tycoon J. Howard Marshall never included her in his will and left his $1.6 billion estate to one of his sons. Anna was almost completely broke by the time she died of an accidental in 2000. In 2009, escaped spree robber Jeffrey Manchester built a secret hideout inside of a Toys R Us. He lived there for 6 months, surviving off of kid snacks and watching DVDs to pass the time. In September of 1983, Soviet military officer Stanislav Petrov received a message that the US had launched 5 nuclear missiles that were headed for Moscow. He could have launched a retaliatory strike, but refused to because his gut instinct said it was a false alarm. Turns out the computer detection system was simply malfunctioning, and he had saved the world from a nuclear war. Known for her role in Throw Mama from the Train, actress Anne Ramsey was in severe pain during the entire production. She had parts of her tongue and jaw removed during surgery for throat cancer, resulting in her slurred speech throughout the movie. She was nominated for an Oscar 6 months before dying of the cancer. Ant corpses release a chemical when they die that tells the other ants in the colony to dispose of them. In the 1950s, a Harvard scientist once recreated this chemical and dropped it on a live ant. Its ant friends kept carrying it to the graveyard no matter how much it struggled to return. The original owner of Macy's, Isidore Straus, and his wife Ida both died on the Titanic. The husband had a chance to join his wife on a lifeboat, but stayed behind to give his spot to a child. Refusing to leave her husband behind, Ida decided to leave the lifeboat as well. They were last seen holding hands on the deck and were portrayed in the movie as the couple who were embracing each other as the ship went down. Here's a 2006 photo of Mike Tyson shaking the hand of Dale Hausner, a Phoenix serial killer who took the lives of 8 people via drive-by shootings in the mid-2000s. A few days after Tyson met up with Hausner, who was pretending to be a sports writer, police showed up at the gym and informed Mike about Hausner's awful crimes. The boxer later said he never suspected anything wrong with Hausner, describing him as a nice little guy. An 8-year-old girl once found a 4-leaf clover and gave it to her dad for good luck. When her father died, she found out he kept it in his pocket every day for 20 straight years. A 42-year-old Russian fisherman was viciously attacked by a brown bear in 2014, but he was spared when the ringtone his granddaughter installed onto his phone suddenly went off. Justin Bieber's song Baby miraculously sent the bear running back into the woods like a bitch. Titanic survivor Dick Williams spent over 6 hours waist deep in freezing waters before being rescued. Doctors wanted to amputate both of his legs, but he refused because he wanted to continue playing tennis. He made a full recovery and went on to become a US tennis champion in mixed doubles. In 2011, a Swedish man named Richard Handel was arrested for trying to split atoms in his kitchen. He was charged with unauthorized possession of nuclear material, but said he just wanted to see if it was possible to split atoms at home. According to experts, the average American will walk past a murderer about 36 times throughout their life. A death row inmate in Tennessee discovered that there were untested fingerprints that were found at the original crime scene. In a last-ditch effort to prove his innocence, he successfully petitioned the courts to run the tests. They were found to be his own fingerprints, confirming his guiltiness. In 2020, an Argentinian farmer found 4 20,000-year-old fossilized glyptodons on his property. Glyptodons were an ancient species of armadillo that were roughly the size of a modern-day smart car. You may also remember them from the movie Ice Age. In 1992, a British man was using a metal detector to find a lost hammer on his farm. But instead, he stumbled upon one of the largest collections of ancient Roman coins in the world, worth over $5 million today. In 1965, a Ukrainian farmer dug up the lower jawbone of a mammoth. Further excavations revealed 4 huts that were made completely out of mammoth bones. The prehistoric shelters are estimated to be around 15,000 years old. In 1963, a Turkish man knocked down a wall in his home while making some renovations. Behind the wall, he found a cave-like room that led to a tunnel system with more ancient rooms. He had discovered the ancient underground city of Derinkuyu, built around 700 BC and once had a population of over 20,000 people.